Today we're going to be talking about Dye's upper mid-tiered gun, and I'll give my feedback on kind of what I think about it and see how it stacks up against the competition. So during this review, I'm going to be making some comparisons to the GTEK 160R and also give some comparisons to the XLS given my experience using those markers, that and the RSX in the past. So, price. The DSR new comes in at $900. It's definitely the most expensive marker out of the three options. Used, all the markers seem to be in the same kind of category, anywhere between $450 to $600. You can pretty much find these in the 160R and the XLS all day at around $600, if not less. So they're extremely affordable for those looking to get not something that's quite entry level or straight mid-tier, or that's something that's close and scraping the bottom of the higher end guns out there. Ergonomics. The DSR is a very comfortable marker. Everything kind of fits nicely in your hands, a very comfortable front grip, which holds the battery. It's got a nice rounded rectangular profile to it. It allows for really easy and comfortable gripping. DSR also has Dye's hourglass trigger frame. Some people love it, some people hate it. I think people with medium-sized hands will find this comfortable. Personally, I wish the trigger guard was a little longer, as I find my fingers hitting the front of the trigger guard, but it's a pretty comfortable marker for sure. One thing to note that I think is missed quite a bit in these reviews on the DSR is that the gun's actually quite short in length. When I was comparing it to the XLS the day I got it, the front of the XLS front grip came out here, almost completely clearing the front grip here. And I know for a fact that the XLS is 1 centimeter longer than the RSX. So it's got to be about the size of a RSX, and it kind of feels like that. It's a little hard to capture right now, but the pointed eclipse GTEK is definitely longer as well and comes out further, as well as the feed neck. The feed neck and the front grip are longer on the 160R compared to the DSR. And when you first go to shoot this marker, it's definitely a little bit kickier, and I think it has to do with the length of it. But ergonomics, I'm happy with them. It's definitely, obviously, one of those things that you kind of need to feel it for yourself and get a hands-on feel for. Maintenance, accessibility, and features. The main thing for the DSR, it's a very simplistic design. It's very minimalist. There's no screw heads or bolts really sticking out, and it kind of gives it a nice clean feel. The only real screw heads you see are in the grips here, and then the adjustments on the side for the trigger. The big thing for this marker is the arc bolt, which has a quick release button on the back. This is supposed to be the successor to the Dye NT. I find this bolt to be, it's pretty complex in my opinion compared to like the Gamma Core. It kind of reminds me of the Lux bolts and the V16 drivetrains. They may not have anything in common really, but they just kind of remind me of it. I find this bolt to be a little bit more of a pain to take apart compared to the Gamma Core. Very, very different looking bolts for sure. I know the arc bolt uses kind of similar technology to the Gamma Core, where the gamma core captures or recaptures air that's used to shoot the ball, and also has something similar to mechanical dwell. So the DSR is also somewhat dwell insensitive. The bolt's pretty efficient, I have to say. I've had some issues with bolt stick. It's actually the first day I played with it. It was like the second game or third game in. Right off break, I pulled the gun up, and about 8 shots didn't fire. All I hear was just air kind of trying to actuate, but didn't actually fully make it. By the time I made it to my bunker, it started firing again, but it kind of dinged my confidence a little bit because I definitely wasn't expecting that on this marker, given the reviews and the reputation it seems to be gathering as being a more reliable marker. One thing to note, the gun runs at 115 psi. Gamma core runs around 135. You definitely feel the softness of the bolt or of the shot, which I can kind of get into a little bit later. The trigger die uses this new edge trigger, I believe. I'm not too fond of it. I think it's fallen a little short. It's very limited in adjustability. I've had issues where it gets stuck if you're trying to get it adjusted just the way you want it to. I think there's something with the issue with the spring inside getting caught on the screws in there. I know if you try to adjust spring tension, it actually shortens the travel of the trigger. So you're constantly trying to get a balance to get this trigger to run correctly. And I find it kind of frustrating. It's also very, not vague, it's not very satisfying to fire. You find more satisfaction clicking on a computer mouse than this trigger, really. But it's one of those things where when you're playing with it, it's not that big of a deal. An eye pipe, I don't like these things. I think they're useless. I feel they kind of invented or innovated a potential issue in the future. No other company does this. Yeah, I guess in some cases it's an issue having balls break in the breech. But personally, I've never had that happen to me with any of these newer high-end electronic markers. Or even some of the older ones. It's just never been an issue. So this can be an issue for something that I've never had an issue for, personally. But maybe that's just me. It can break if you overscrew the barrel on. They get old. If the oil gets to it, the oil's going to break down the plastic. It's just what's going to happen. The feed neck. The feed neck I find pretty limiting. There's no adjustment screw on the side or thumb screw. You have to pay extra for that. It's another $35. So the only adjustments you can really make is by rotating this lever. So it's usually over tightened or not tight enough. So I wish there was some more incremental changes besides just buying another feed neck. And the lever has a tendency to scratch the collar here, and I don't really like how, personally, like how it rotates around like this. It's unnecessary. The regulator, it's easily accessible and easily rebuildable regulator, which I really like. That's one of my biggest pet peeves. You don't need any special tools to take it apart. It seems to be pretty efficient. I have no complaints there. The on-off ASA, I found that it kind of snuck pulling down a little bit during the day, kind of like at this position. It didn't fully degas or anything, but something you kind of have to be aware of. As when it's in this position, it's more likely to be possibly flicked open, or maybe even closed for that matter. The grips, very soft grips. Some people find them comfortable, some may not. I do like the pointed clip grips a lot. They feel durable. I think these are a little too soft. If they weren't this soft, you wouldn't be able to take the grips off with the way they designed it, which I don't like. The system they use, using these two hidden screws to start opening the tab for the grip and then needing to pull them down, I think it ends up taking more time to remove them like that than if you were to just take apart or take off 4 screws to take these grips off. I'm not very fond of this system, and I find that over time you'll damage the clips and probably need to buy a new pair of grips for these things. So we're going to do a quick little test. We're going to kind of time how long it takes me to disassemble the grips from these two guns and kind of compare how long it takes. Got to remove those little screws. Shit. Hold this down. Obviously, I'm not the fastest at this, but it shouldn't be this difficult. Damn it, and those stupid clips get caught back in. So if you can see here, the clips get kind of marred and get caught in the frame while you're taking them off and kind of re-latch on again. You can kind of see here the clips are getting marred again on the front. So it's a matter of time before these clips may fail. The DSR has a front grip that contains the battery. You have to use a coin. It's held in by a plastic screw, and the surround is also plastic as well. And the plastic seems to be pretty soft, and you will mar it up eventually using a coin. Don't use a screwdriver, it'll make it worse. It comes off nice and easy. Got the 9-volt here and a battery harness, or wired harness. I'm not a big fan of these, but it works. You have access to the trigger frame screw here when you take that off, and underneath here, underneath the bolt. So we're going to compare the weight of these markers. 938 for the GTEK. And 868 for the DSR. Shot quality. My first impressions of it was it's a very soft and smooth shot. Almost on the level of a Lux, but not as it's not as much air kind of being released. so it's not such a rush of energy leaving the barrel. In comparison, it's also the lower operating pressure at 115. It's nice and soft and snappy. It does kind of remind me a bit of an axe, or the inline poppet design that Empire has. It definitely has more character in a way compared to the GTEK by being kind of soft and quiet. This is more standard, I guess. It's less unique, it's snappier, and I think maybe a tad louder. So I don't really have a preference on shot quality personally. I like how both of them shoot. Some people like the way Luxes shoot. I personally don't really love them because of all the air that's just being kind of just released down the barrel. I actually find Luxes to be very loud. When you're shooting them, they're pretty quiet, but when you're downfield, I swear they're one of the loudest guns that you hear across field, especially when you're roughing. I do photography, and I can always tell whenever a Lux is shooting down lane and I'm on the other side of the field taking pictures. There's just a lot of energy being released down the barrel. I don't think you have quite that same effect with the DSR though. Pointability, I mean, you can tell from the design of this marker, the body is almost like an extension of the barrel to some degree, so it's very easy to line up shots with this gun. Absolutely zero complaints there. It's a great shooter in that regard. Like I said before, ergonomics, it may not be for everyone, so when you hold up a gun, some people may naturally point really well with this. For me personally, I find it very comfortable. So I decided I wanted to reflect a little bit on this marker before giving my conclusion. I noticed while I was editing the video that it seemed a little too negative, like there really wasn't anything good about this marker, which isn't the case. I just think, kind of given my experience and kind of like the expectations that you expect from a just under $1,000 marker, expectations should be on the higher side, I think, especially from a company like Dye. I've never owned a Dye gun until the DSR. I know they have a loyal fan base, just like Pointed Eclipse does. They are known for making great high-end markers. Personally, they haven't been quite my cup of tea, but a lot of people have been saying amazing things about the DSR, which I think is fair, honestly. Personally, though, it's not really the marker for me. Unfortunately, going into this, I really wanted to love it. Coming from the 160R, I was really hoping for something different, and I was hoping that this was going to be it. As a tool, looking at a paintball marker as a tool, I have to say I prefer the 160R. It's a workhorse. It's just the reliability alone is kind of king for me. And the 160R is a wonderful tool, and so is this. But I also don't love the GTEK either. These two markers are kind of lacking character for me. There's nothing that really is grabbing me to want to go pull these guns out and shoot with them, like every time I go out to play. Despite my attitude, though, it's not a terrible marker in the slightest. It's a fantastic marker, especially when you look at them, or look at this at around $500 used price point. It's such a great marker for the money, and I can't stress that enough, really. It does everything you would need from it, and it checks so many boxes off that, I mean, mainly people care about when shopping for a marker. It's got a nice soft shot, it's air efficient, ergos are pretty good, it's pretty lightweight, relatively reliable, and it's a good looking marker. So yeah, anyways, I hope you guys find this somewhat informative, and thanks for watching.
Recording? Okay. So we're going to be doing a quick shot comparison between the DSR and a Shocker XLS.